I think the headline this week was Colorado and Columbia Care, or specifically Medicine Man and Columbia Care, and their acquisition. I believe it was a $42 million acquisition, some kind of mix of cash and stock. I think it's 4 locations with Medicine Man, and this comes hot off the heels of Columbia Care's Green Solution acquisition. So they're really interested in the market here. But what I think is pretty interesting, from my perspective, is that Medicine Man, for those that don't know, Medicine Man has been around for, I believe, 12 years at this point, which is a lifetime in cannabis. And so is this, is this the end of the beginning, as they say, of, this type of retail? And are MSOs just going to be gobbling up all these types of businesses? What do you think, Emily?
Yeah, I think that as we've talked about in some of our other shows, I think, in these emerging markets, you go through these various cycles, and you have creation of companies, and you have consolidation, and then you have creation of new companies. And it's kind of like, the cycle of the wildfires out here in the forests, and they, burn away old brush, and then new things come along. But I do remember when we first got into the industry, and my first trip to Colorado in January of 2014, and the first stop absolutely was to go to Medicine Man. And I remember seeing it on the television before that, which was a really big deal back then, to see anything related to the cannabis industry being taken even semi-seriously. It was a very important thing. And of course, Andy Williams, being a pioneer that he was, and somebody who, or is, but was at that time, but still is, and someone that we've known for a long time. He's a very kind of dear colleague of ours in the industry. So it is interesting to see some of these chapters close, as you said. I think that's right. I think it's the end of the beginning, and we continue to see the consolidation of some of the first wave of players in the space. So TGS was one of them too. I remember seeing the Green Solution when I was, running around Colorado doing diligence on technology companies and trying to understand what a regulated market like that looked like, since it was so different from California. And those were really some of the first chains of dispensaries that existed, both of those companies. And so it is really interesting to see the MSOs starting to, again, I know we've talked about this a little bit last week with California, but Colorado, these more mature markets, that has been an adult use market that's been running longer than any legal adult use market really in the world, I want to say, where actual commerce has occurred around it.
Oh, absolutely. Colorado opened January 1st of 2014.
Yep.
Where Washington State legalized at the same time, but it took them a lot longer to start the program, because in Colorado, they allowed organizations like Medicine Man to sell adult use and medical at the same time. And they literally had to have a second door. That was the adult use door that you had to walk through. You could walk through a different door into the same area, and it was like roped off basically, but you're in the same building. But yeah, the oldest adult use market, and some of these brands like Medicine Man are the oldest chains. Like Green Solution, I think, had 10 or so stores. I don't remember the exact count, back then, or at some point, before their acquisition, and that was a massive number of stores. Most states didn't have anything like that, and now you've got Columbia Care, which has 90 plus stores coming in. So it's kind of this order of magnitude larger. And so, yeah, those days of Colorado where it was like, wow, this is wild. There's chains of cannabis dispensaries, cannabis retailers. And now kind of seeing them be acquired by the MSOs is pretty interesting.
It is. Those markets, even at their age, their ripe old age, they're still growing at a rate of 25% year over year. And, you can look at Illinois or the new markets. They grow at an average rate of, I think, 136% year over year. And, so you get the benefit of that rapid growth in those new markets, but I think being able to access these multi-retail location operators in a market that's well established and is still growing at a pretty impressive rate, I think it gives you a nice diversification. So I'm very curious to see how this plays out. And we did talk a little bit about how the market sometimes penalizes the MSOs for having ownership in those older states, but I think in the long view, it's a good move for them. So kind of happy for everybody all the way around. But I'm glad you brought up, the heritage of Medicine Man, because I think it's important that we remember the origins of really what this industry the industry is old. It's decades
Right.
and decades old. But there's kind of the modern industry, which I kind of count as starting when Colorado opened adult use. And I feel like this is the beginning of this new chapter, and now we're closing that part and we're moving on. But I don't think this means that we'll see the end of independent operators. I think there will be a ton of consolidation, and then I think there will be a whole new wave of people who want to disrupt what will become kind of the chains of cannabis nationally. So it's good.
It is good. And Colorado is still a large market. I mean, you're mentioning, it's still some sizable growth. I think it did over $2 billion, last year in sales. And so even though it's a mature market, still growing, there's plenty of opportunity there. And it does have some parallels with vertical integration. Colorado was historically, pretty much all vertically integrated in the beginning. So dispensaries were producing, processing, and retailing their own products. And, that is in the wheelhouse of a lot of MSOs, as they have to do vertical integration in a lot of these limited license markets. So I can see, a lot of the overlap. But it is great. And it's great for, organizations like Medicine Man to, get to some sort of scale and have an exit, after 12 years of being in the business. And they've done a lot, from the Medicine Man retailers, and they spun out the Medicine Man tech kind of stuff and all of that. So just really a good success story, I think, longer term to see that kind of happening, and, looking forward to seeing more of that happening in other markets as well. So big headline for sure.
Listen to High Rise on all major streaming platforms and watch the visual on YouTube.